Hey guys, happy Wednesday to you. Today is March 13th, 2024, and this is the Real Estate Be the Bank broadcast. Today I'm going to have Chris Seveney on, Shante Duffy from BIFI Loan Servicing, and Jay Redding. We're going to be talking about, Jerome Powell came up with some information kind of alluding to us what's going to happen in the future with rates. We got some John Burns data from the Fear and Greed Index, and I got a couple land contracts I bought here in Indianapolis that we're going to go over a case study with. So stay tuned. All right, it's hump day. Whoop, whoop. You guys remember that commercial?
Yeah.
No.
You don't remember that commercial? Seriously? It was like a camel and he had two humps.
He would walk around hump day.
Am I? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah,
I remember.
I'm on an island by myself here with Shante, all right? All right. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Fantastic.
All right. I
Amazing.
noticed everybody has a headset with a microphone attached to it except for me. I'm the odd duck today.
I'm on my third webinar today, so usually I use the mic, but I'm just going to go headset this time. So.
Did you have to get a Red Bull or a Monster drink before this one?
Actually, you know what? I had a smoothie, but I ordered them from I forget where I get them. Healthy Harvest. If you've never had those smoothies, they come and you just can add water and milk to them and mix them together. They're really good. So very filling too.
So sounds good.
Check it out.
Well, you notice we got a new face on the show today. We got Shante Duffy replacing Jamie Bateman. Did you fire him? Is that what happened?
No, he was like, "This is your punishment, Shante. You go fill in for me." No, he's just busy today. He's like, "Will you take my spot?" So I said, "Of course."
Yeah, you got to deal with these knuckleheads here. We're a wily bunch.
First, figure out who was on the call before I agreed. But I was like, "Oh, okay, these are awesome people." So I'm okay.
You felt safe, huh?
Yep. Right at home.
That's cool. All right, Jay, you doing good?
Doing fantastic. So
Yeah,
been looking at a lot of tapes, putting a few bids out. So we'll see.
What are you looking for? Performing, non-performing, anything?
Both.
Yeah.
So
how about you, Chris? What are you looking at right now?
Non-performing. So we've seen a good mix of some non-performing loans come through our portfolio that we put a few $1 million in bids on. So cross our fingers that we'll get some of those awarded to us.
Awesome. Shante, what's traveling through the servicing industry? Anything interesting?
I'm seeing a lot of seller financed is what I've been dealing with a lot lately. So that's always a fun ride.
It's a fun ride because things aren't set up the right way.
Not always. So we just kind of have to share the education and spread the knowledge, but we get it there. We fix it for them and help out and handle servicing. So it's a win-win.
Are you seeing more of origination seller finance paper
Yep.
as opposed to legacy paper? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you do subject to and all that other fun stuff too, Shante?
Yep. Service subject twos and wraps and all those fun commercial. We've been accepting a lot more of.
Okay.
Some hard money loans are coming our way. So it's been a good point.
Interesting you bring up commercial because we're going to talk about some of that a little bit later. But what type of commercial, like retail, industrial, multi-buildings?
They're definitely not retail. I don't 100% pay too much attention to 100% what they are. But the few that I've kind of reviewed and just kind of helped the rest of the team with, they are not residential at all. So I just kind of set it up for them, make sure they take it on.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever serviced a loan that was tied to a gas station?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah. I don't know. If you ever run across that, I'd be interested in knowing.
You will be the first to know.
Right on. All right, guys, I'm going to transition over to the PowerPoint, so hang on. right, this broadcast would not be possible without the three of you and me, right? So today, American Note Buyers is my company. You can reach me at investors@ambfunds.com. And what we do is no different than anyone else really on here. We're real estate investors, mainly in the note space, and we buy and sell performing and non-performing real estate loans, mainly seller finance, not really the conventional paper. We do have a small fund that we manage as well to buy assets in. And the next person in line is Mr. Jay Redding.
We buy performing and non-performing, primarily in residential. We also do some seller financing. We tend to create that ourselves, and we've also done some wraps. And I've just finished up a wrap here and got it boarded. So everything seems to be going smoothly. So let's hope that continues to go.
Sweet. You can reach Jay at info@CassidyInvestments.com. Yes. All right, Chris.
Yep. So I'm with Seveney Investments, and we have a fund that's open to both accredited and non-accredited investors, and I can talk about it. And with it,
legally, you can talk about it.
Legally, I can talk about it. I know people talk about them illegally, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But we primarily buy performing and non-performing loans secured by single-family 1 to 4 unit. Pretty much across the U.S., we stay out of the fun states, or try to stay out of the fun states of New York, Maine, Pacific Northwest, and some of those other places.
I bet we can all name them.
Yes.
Lay it on one hand. We can name by those states. All right, Shantae,
BIFI Loan Servicing, where we service all your loans that you guys are investing in. We service performing, non-performing, senior liens, junior liens, reverse mortgages, commercial, residential, kind of a little bit of everything, subject to's, all that fun stuff. So,
yay. All right. All four of us have kind of our own little side projects that we do as well with podcasting and having little video informational, educational things like we're doing right now. So my podcast is called Be the Bank. Surprised by the name? Not really. It's on all podcast directories. It's about a 20 to 30 minute filler. I pretty much either interview somebody in the note or real estate space, or maybe a vendor, or pretty much have a debatable topic in our space, and we just kind of beat it up and talk about it for 20 to 30 minutes. So I've had all of you have been on my podcast as well, and like I said, we film it on our YouTube channel as well. So if you go to the American Note Buyers YouTube channel, you can check that out. And we're on our 6th season already. I can't believe that.
We do note talks with Kyle and Jay, and we essentially talk all things notes. That's really driven by questions that's brought to us. We always have some content that we cover, or some due diligence or something that we're working on right at that time. Share a deal maybe we've just finished up. But basically, we focus in on helping you wherever you're at. If you got a deal you want a second set of eyes to look at, we'll cover that. And our next talk is on March 28th, and you can go to our website to sign up to get the notification for that. And we're going to be talking about seller financing, some of the things that you want to avoid, and some of the things that you want to do to create the value on your seller finance note. So that's basically what we do.
Jay, I'm glad that you do that when you bring stuff on for people as a second set of eyes on something. That's something that's valuable that people should really take advantage of when someone, any of us on here that obviously have bought many loans and have been in the business for quite a few years. And that's something I wish I would have done more regularly when I bought my first couple of notes. It's just had somebody tethered with me and said, hey, you know, that's not a good idea to do it that way. Or, you need to look at the code enforcements before you buy that non-performing loan there, buddy. That house is gonna be demolished.
We try to
ask me how I know.
Yeah, we try to keep you from stepping in the poo. Let's do it that way.
All right, Chris.
Don't forget the water liens either.
Yeah, exactly. Water liens.
So we have a podcast, Creating Wealth Simplified, and on our podcast, it's twofold. One is we share our note investing story, provide a lot of case studies and talk about what we're seeing in the industry, as well as talk about things we see in general in real estate, what's going on, proper due diligence, things we're hearing, ways for people when they go to look to invest in other asset classes, just the type of questions you should be asking, because it's always better to ask those up front than after the fact, because usually when it's after the fact, you don't realize that fine print is very fine when you're going back and looking at it.
It costs more money to make up for the error after the fact than it does to catch it beforehand, right?
True.
That's a lot more.
All right. Shantae, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but we all might be able to speak about this.
This is Jamie's podcast, From Adversity to Abundance, where he has guests on that tell their real life stories and provide advice to be better entrepreneurs and where they started, where they've been, and where they plan on going. I've been on it twice. So go check it out. Take a listen. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you were just on was it the 100th episode?
The 100th episode.
That's kind of cool. It's a nice little anniversary. And then you got to share kind of your journey from the previous companies that you've worked with, and then obviously partnering with Jamie and Chris when he was involved as well.
Yep. That was in the first episode. And then it was just kind of what I've been doing for the past year and a half that I, want to fill everybody in on. So
cool.
We can be honest. We play Survivor here, and Jamie was voted off the island, and now Shantae joined us.
Don't tell him that. He's going to get upset.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye. Does anyone know who the Federal Reserve Chair is? Mr. Jerome Powell. Richard used to tease me and said, "Yeah, I got a direct line to him. It's this little red rotary phone I have next to my office." I believed him for a while. Yeah. So I just found this little clipping just because it was just neat to have the graphic up there. And from what you guys have heard and read about the Fed, it seems like to me, and each of you can chime in here at any time, that the Fed keeps saying like things are going well, but they aren't well enough for them to actually start making a move of moving the Fed rate down. And so they kind of have led us to believe, in my opinion, that maybe there might be some rate changes over the summer or later than summer. But what do you guys think is going on there?
I'll start. People on. So I'm rather quiet. So I mean, this is something actually I nerd out a lot on, so I can talk about it. And
okay.
So let me first explain to people how the inflation rate is determined, because I think a lot of people don't understand this.
Okay.
And I think it just came in at 3.2%. And what they do is they take the last 12 months and they add it all together. So this past month, I think, was 0.3, January was 0.4. So you go back and just keep adding them. Now, the interesting thing is 2 months ago, people thought they'd cut this month because last February, I think, was at like a 0.5. So it's like you got 0.5 coming off your books and you're expecting to be lower, which would drop it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And March of last year was only 0.1. So probably next month, inflation actually is probably going to go up actually a little bit because of that. When you go back and look at what is coming off versus what's getting added.
Yeah.
But I think, when people keep thinking rates are going to go down, and for everyone on here, mostly they're thinking real estate. When is my mortgage going to go down?
Yeah.
People got to also remember 30% of that number of inflation comes from housing.
Mm-hmm.
So if housing is expensive, inflation is high, so interest rates aren't going to come down, most likely, until housing comes down. Now, the other factor that plays into this is the inflation alone is only kind of like one side of the knife, or one side of the sword, and the other is liquidity. And in order to bring inflation down, they also got to pull some money out of the economy. Economy. Unfortunately, they increased our money supply by 40%, and now so that's like literally taking like $100,000 out of the bank and putting a penny back in. That's kind of what the government is doing. So they make it sound like they're doing all these, extraneous things, and they're really not. So, when people talk about, when they're coming down, reality is nobody knows. but inflation and getting it to 2% is the same thing as somebody trying to go from 200 pounds down to 150. It started at 9%. Now it got down to 3. So great, you're down to 165 pounds, and you're looking good. Now to get to 150, it is going to be painful and a lot of work. And people think, oh, you can do it overnight. That's not the case.
That's a good analogy.
So it's really going to be interesting that I don't think, next month or whenever they next meet, they're going to drop. And I think the next one might be, I forget when it is, but, it'll be interesting, but I'm not, and if they do drop it like a quarter point, it's not, interest rates aren't going to all of a sudden go back down to 3%. I'm not sure we're going to see interest rates back down to 3 in the near future.
No, nor should we.
Exactly.
Yeah, nor should we see that low.
But sorry, I did all the talking there.
No, that's fine.
Nope,
you did a great job explaining that. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm just, from my viewpoint, I'm going to be the cynical one here just a little bit, which Chris, you're usually the one here.
Man, I'm going to change my name and you better change yours.
I'm going to view this from the standpoint, this is an election year. We're not going to hear anything. It's going to be whitewashed across the board. My viewpoint is, what am I seeing when we go and buy stuff? Are we seeing prices still increasing? Are we stabilizing? I see and I hear from people who are buying things on a daily basis. We're seeing reports from the standpoint of debt is increasing, repo on cars is increasing. People are struggling. Things are getting tighter out here. Whether the inflation is increasing or decreasing, the pain is not even close to being over yet, in my opinion. So if the price, if interest rate, I don't think interest rates are really going to change much until at the earliest, the end of fourth quarter. Right? I just think it's going to take that long. I have the wonderful privilege of living in the 1970s. All right. I was in high school and I remember the 18% interest rates.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think there's anything is going to happen tremendously fast. It's going to be higher for longer. I think that's very true. How long? I don't know, but it's not going to be in just a few months. That's my overall.
Okay.
I remember 70s too, but I was more soil and diapers at that point.
I was in high school.
I don't remember the 70s at all because I didn't exist then.
You were a twinkle in somebody's eye? Huh?
Not even. A bit far from that. But
hey,
good.
I was going to ask you, I'm sorry, my screen just froze. I was going to ask Shante, because you guys see a lot of owner finance stuff. What are you seeing for interest rates? Are they going up, down, staying the same?
I feel like they're going up from what I saw like a year ago when I first was kind of getting my feet back into looking at them. Okay. But I also have a lot of conversations with a lot of the seller finance lenders that I, do service their loans for. And their whole thing is, well, naturally interest rates aren't super low. We're not giving anything, backdoor. We're not shorting it. They're going through the proper steps, but they're not as low as I was expecting lower. I don't know why I was expecting that, but then the reality after having several different conversations with people, just kind of talking and reading a little bit more, this isn't going, I don't see interest rates dropping down drastically anytime soon. I don't think this year. I think, Chris, you and I've had a conversation not too long ago. We're like, no, we're not seeing this until like next year, 2025. And I still don't think it'll drop that low. I think it's wishful thinking personally.
Okay. Very cool. All right, the next thing I got is I swiped this from the what they call it, Black Knight Financial Data and ICE. They kind of merged together, and now they are going to be transferring over all these reports over from the Black Knight Financial Data website to the ICE. I think it's called ICEMortgageMonitor.com is where I got it from. But anyways, it's a really cool report. It comes out once a month, and it has a ton of data on residential and about foreclosures and forbearances and all the COVID stuff and that. And so I just grabbed the home price index because I thought it was kind of neat to see from right after Jay was in high school all the way up to now. just to see kind of how the home price index has kind of gone up. And then we had that anomaly happen for about 3 or 4 years. And then things continue to go up. And then we saw the COVID over inflation and pricing pandemic. And then it dropped out of the sky. And then now it's kind of back up again. So this is the roller coaster of the home price index that we see. Does anybody have any comments about that?
I think two things I'll comment on is one, I think it's very market segment area driven in regards to where you're seeing prices. I was on the phone with somebody a week ago who bought a $1.5 million home in Austin 2 years ago. And now that house is probably worth between $1 million and $1.2 million. It's, 20% plus decline. Certain markets I think are doing better. I think a good judge to determine those markets is if they had significant price appreciation, did salaries also appreciate with it? Because areas like Austin or Boise, Idaho, where, had really high, increases, they got that COVID bump, but all of a sudden, the salaries now aren't backing that up. So the affordability component is, especially when you're looking at like $1 million home, that's the type of home that does get financed. A $5 million home typically is cash, but the $1 million homes get financed.
Yeah.
When your payment on $1 million home went from, could have been 2-3 years ago, I don't know, $3,500 now to like $7,000 or whatever it could be. That is a huge swing.
Yeah. Huge.
I would say I like the fact that we invest heavily in the Midwest because we don't tend to see this, Chris, what you're talking about, the major run-ups.
Yep.
And we tend not to also see the major drops. If the drops do come, all right, it's always the coast they hit first, so we can prepare for what's coming because we have a little lag time, usually 6 months to a year, before we see what's happening in the East Coast and West Coast before it starts to get into the Midwest. So that's one of the things I've really liked always being investing here in the Midwest.
Shante, what do you think? Any comments?
As someone who doesn't own a home, so I watch home prices. I'm not sure where I want to actually live and like completely settle roots. I know everyone will tell you I'll never leave New Jersey, but I've been changing my mind lately. It's terrifying because I just kind of fooled around and looked at completely leaving the state, going across the country, if I was to just leave. And I do think that Chris's point to salaries aren't matching up with, affordability. What I could have bought 3 years ago wouldn't cost me the same amount that I could buy today. And that's me coming from the homeowner standpoint, not even from the investor standpoint, someone who wants to buy and be the one living in that home. So I see it. I have friends, just in my generation, we're buying houses now to live in. Plus we got a lot of them investing, but we're buying houses now and I'm watching them put themselves in situations where there's no way, they're already struggling, questioning, Shante, what happens in foreclosure? What are my options? I don't want to be in that situation. So I'm patiently just buying time and waiting and making sure I get to where I need to be, to where I can live comfortably. I don't want a $7,000 mortgage. That's crazy.
One thing I'll add to that, Justin, too, that's interesting was this weekend, my daughter was home from college and my son, and we were talking about, my son brought up something on inflation. And basically the house next door to us has been talked about, the person living here passed away, the daughter's there and considering selling it, and kind of threw some numbers out at it. And at today's interest rate, so we built our house 10 years ago, and I like to think I have a nice house. And the house next door literally is probably a knockdown because it was built in the 70s. I mean, it could be lived in, but because of the value, probably a builder's going to come in, knock it down, and build something.
Yeah.
And, I told my kids, I'm like, basically from an affordability standpoint, to talk about inflation, what our mortgage payment is could now basically, we couldn't afford our house, but basically we'd afford the house next door.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's about, it's a small house. It's about half the size of ours. And like I said, ours is, we built it new and theirs is, 60 years old, but just to kind of use a picture of what 5 years ago compared to today would buy you is two completely different things.
It's amazing. Until it happened, I never believed it could happen.
So,
good old John Burns and the CRE Daily come out with this really cool thing on the commercial space called the Fear and Greed Index. And this is the information that comes out, and they basically take a survey of about 980 investors in the commercial real estate space across the country. And they're in all types of things, multifamily, industrial, retail, and office. And they're mainly the owners of the companies. And so they're doing this survey so we can kind of see what are they seeing and what are they feeling and what are they going to do about it. And so I just grabbed a couple of these slides. You can go download the report at CRE Daily. I think if you subscribe to their newsletter, you'll be able to get this report. And I gave it to all of you guys, and you all mentioned how cool it was. And this one I thought was kind of neat. The year over year in every major sector, asset values. And this is the year over year change in the fourth quarter is when they did this survey after the fourth quarter to see how they feel of what has been changing. And so obviously the office space, jumping down that much. And if you notice a little diamond, the orange diamond, I think that's quarter three of 2023 that it shows of what they thought then. So it has gotten better, but it's still obviously in the negatives for all three of them. So I don't know if anybody had any comments, but a couple other slides kind of coincide with this one. Chris, you were the commercial space guy out of all of us, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I've built every single one of those and lived many years and days in those type of asset classes. The one thing I'll just mention to people, because a lot of listeners might not be involved in industrial or retail or invest in office. A lot of people who follow notes also invest in multifamily, whether it's through syndication or own other types of asset classes or assets within it. The thing I'll just let people as a reminder is just because you have a good you're invested in assets that's performing well, just remember the assets around you, if those aren't performing well, that can drag your value down. And what do I mean by that is, you're cash flowing, you get your debt service, so you'll be able to cover the loan payments, but the 3 buildings near you can't. And all of a sudden those have to go to sell. And all of a sudden, instead of those selling at a 5 cap, they sell at a 7.5 cap. Well, you want to go do a new valuation or go to liquidate. Well, if everything around you now is selling at a 7.5, even though you've got great cash flow, you're crushing it and you operate like you should operate it, it's just like, living in a neighborhood where, people don't update their houses and, they become vacant or whatnot. Those valuations can pull down values in the neighborhood. Multifamily is even more, can happen more to multifamily because there's usually not as many comps in that area. So it's something people just be aware of that.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it is a great point.
Yeah. So. The how they feel about are they fearful or greedy? They actually say they're balanced on most of these except for office, which I found pretty interesting. On on a 100-point scale, this is how they graded it. So does anybody have anybody else surprised about that?
Yeah,
I thought they were going to be more fearful on all of them, but they weren't.
All of those. I be honest, on the previous slide, I was a little surprised that retail has not been was not as great a drop as what I would anticipate. Industrial, I figure, is really pretty stable. Office, office is taking a beating and is going to for a while. And some of the multifamilies in certain markets are certainly going to have an issue as well.
That's a good point. I didn't notice that about retail, but yeah, you're right.
Retail's come back, I think, pretty strong. And where a lot of these retail centers, what happened is, because I built a bunch of them, is the big box stores where the Dollar Trees and stuff like that, a lot of those left, and that left a big void. But there's been a lot more restaurants and other food service that has come into play that they've taken those big spaces and they're able to make them smaller and be able to adjust pretty quickly.
Okay.
The surprise, the last one, guess what? They think it's very difficult to get the capital right now for their projects. I'm not surprised by that. So I would say next to none of them probably can get a bank loan. They probably have to go raise their money in different ways. What do you guys think?
And if they had a debt fund one on here too, that would probably be somewhere in the 20s, low 30s.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
But, yeah, I mean, liquidity is an issue today. I think, you talk to anybody, a lot of banks are very, aware. So one of the interesting things I'll bring up is we've been having some phone calls recently, just getting a pulse and talking with some institutions that do what's called asset-based lending, where they provide typically like farm equipment, vehicles, trucks, but they also sometimes we'll do it to like note companies or, real estate backed as well. And of the 5 I spoke with, 4 of them said, the moment we hear the word real estate, we're like, no. So that should tell you, so they are, that should tell you something, because what's probably happening is, in no private company will admit it that's doing that, but they're probably writing off a significant number of losses for some of these areas or for loans, because one of the things that I was talking, I know one of the funds was doing is they would get a line of credit, so lender to lender financing, to go originate commercial loans. Now, these lending institutions, they charge SOFR plus usually 5 points, which when SOFR was 0 or 1, they're getting their money at 6%. So they're getting at 6, they're originating loans to, multifamily or, second position, stuff at 9%. And they're like, hey, we got 3% spread and we got $10 million. That's, decent money. But all of a sudden, they're on an adjustable rate. The loan they gave out is fixed. Now it's SOFR's at 5.5. Now they're paying 11%, but they lent it out at 9. Plus it's a defaulted multifamily property. All of a sudden they're like, uh-oh, now what do we do?
The squeeze is on.
Yeah.
I wish I would remember this article I read and put it on the slide deck, because it was probably last week when I saw it. And I want to say it was in Chicago, and it was a loan that is being called due. It's about a $60 million loan, and the bank knows that the borrower can't make the payments anymore with the cash flow that's coming in, because their positive cash flow is now evaporated. And so they're not wanting this building, and they're willing to get rid of this thing for 50 cents on the dollar of the unpaid balance on the loan. So just, it's just kind of mind boggling that, you can take a $30 million hit on some of this stuff.
There was one in Chicago that had sold for $38 million in like 2018.
Yeah.
That recently just traded for $4 million. So it was a 90% hit.
Oh my
goodness.
So
and when they're taking that great, that large of a write-off, okay, what do you think that's doing to their balance sheet? All right, and then the impact on how tight they're going to be even on the residential side, because you're getting the bleed over effect is what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, there was another one in Bethesda, Maryland, which is right outside of DC, and it is a very upscale area. And there's a lot of the main area, Wisconsin Avenue, there is, high-rise office, and just it was the place you wanted to be if you had a, company and office. And there was a building there that just traded, same thing. I think it sold for like a 70% discount, or it was something unbelievable. And I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe like downtown Bethesda, something like that would sell. And I used to work in that area, and they were building up all condos and everywhere, work-life balance and be able to walk to work and stuff. And now it's, starting to see, office buildings there going under.
That's crazy. Jay can just write a check for that loan there. Yeah. You take a personal check for $4
I can write the check, but I'm not going to say how far it will bounce.
You can catch that in 2029, please. Okay. All right. Let's get into some case studies here. This is something that we're probably going to try to do on a regular basis, because I think everybody can learn from it, whether it's, the 3 of you go on the call or look at, some mistakes that I made here. But I buy seller finance paper a lot. And so I deal with people that have an imperfect understanding of how to sell a loan or create a loan. And so oftentimes I have to bake into my pricing the fact that I'm going to have an annoyance factor of trying to fix all this before it even gets to like a Shante. And in that,
that's a mess.
Yeah. So, but at the other hand, these are really good loans that have a potentially very high yield for me to either flip it to somebody else or to hold for a high yield in my fund and then, make a good return on it. But you have some things that you got to deal with. So this is not far from being typical of what I run into, but I learn a lot, and no two loans are ever the same. So I live in the Indianapolis area, and I've been doing the note business since about 2016. So I'm one of the very few people in Indianapolis that actually broadcast themselves as a note buyer and seller. So I've been always going to like local RIA and talking at local events and stuff. And so people kind of know me and know what I do finally. So I'll get messages and I'll get pinged every once in a while. I'll be like, hey, such and such has this loan, would you want to buy it? I'm like, yeah, sure. Connect me with them. And so this is how this kind of happened. So this local REI real estate investor that knows me is a wholesaler, and they sold these two properties they had wholesaled to this other real estate investor that's out of state. And this is a pretty good operator that bought these things. And when they bought them, they immediately seller financed them on a land contract to some local people there that were wanting to live in the property and fix it up or just live in there as their home. So there are actually two land contracts. And so I have the conversation with them. I discover they really don't know what it is that they have. They don't understand the process. So I walk them through how it all works. And they are someone that is a wholesaler, what Eddie Speed would say, a ninja. And so they are pretty busy with their day-to-day operations. So they basically just wanted to get rid of these two land contracts and be like, okay, I got what I wanted out of it. And I want to move on. So I'm trying to battle with this person constantly to pull information from them. So they didn't want to deal with it anymore. After I get all the files and I look at this stuff, I ask, hey, where's the insurance on it? And they go, you know what? They don't have insurance on the property. I said, no shit. All right. Oops. So that's something I want to make sure I remember before I buy this.
Yes.
One of them had a real solid pay history on it, and the other one was 2 or 3 months behind. So I, did my salesman tactics with this and says, obviously this one that's behind, it's going to be a little bit more of a discount because it's not really a performing loan. It's behind, rolling 90, we'll call it. I mentioned this. We already bought the property from a wholesaler, and then they seller financed it as is. One of the borrowers actually rehabbed the property and they rented out to someone else, and the other borrower rehabbed the property and lives in it. So we'll call it land contract 1 and land contract 2 for the purposes of this slide here. So we'll just get straight to the numbers because I know you guys want to nerd out on this stuff. So land contract 1, it wasn't a great down payment, but that is the best paying borrower on this. And I believe it had, what I want to say, 8 or 9 months of pay history. So it originated in the beginning of like January of 2023. And I was in the process of buying this like in September of 2023, just to give you a reference here. So it's a nice little payment, $1,200. I only had 52 payments left. So really aggressive AM there. So I was willing to look at this and put a price on it. I hated the interest rate. I wish it was 40%. I don't know why I did 12. Man, I mean, geez. Okay, the other one was the sister loan to it here, and it was a $20,000 down payment at closing. And so again, the P&I is pretty healthy at $1,400. It would have been 52 months left, but I think I calculated it at the time that I looked at this one because the payment true date was off by like 6 or 7 days. So one was the 1st and one was like the 7th or 8th. So it really was like 90 days behind. But so I take that into consideration. So nice down payment on that second one. So the first one I actually offered about $35,000 for it. So it's a pretty healthy discount right there, almost $14,000 discount, which would give me a yield, assuming it pays to maturity, of a pretty nice return. And I think Jay would say, yeah, I don't need a calculator for that. That's
good enough.
Yeah.
The other one, I just offered $40,000 for it. I just threw out a number there. I didn't think they would take it, and they did. And so if I can get that one reperforming, because that was my goal, I could actually have, a nice little 33%er there on that one with a $20,000 discount. So I got a lot of protection in here. So this is a good thing that I ran into a motivated seller, and I was able to kind of get these numbers to work obviously more in my favor. So This is house number 1 of land contract number 1, and this is the one that the borrower rehabbed. They did a pretty good job, in my opinion. The exterior looks really nice. Took some pictures of it, and I don't know at the time when I bought this if it was actually rented out yet, but I don't think it was, and I think it is now. But people thought I was kind of crazy when I was looking at this and said, why are you buying a note that's a non-owner occupied one and they don't have anybody in there renting it out? And I said, well, shit, it's a $1,200 payment and they made like 9 payments in a row. Like what's the problem here? I don't understand. I don't know. It's a performing loan. I mean, I don't have a lot of risk. I'm paying 35 for something that's sitting like that. Like Jay,
and what's it worth now?
It's probably worth 100.
I was gonna say, that's Jay's opinion here. He's our BPO guy.
I'd do that in a heartbeat. Yeah,
easily 80,000. That thing's gonna rent probably. That's probably gonna rent like $1,500 to $1,600 a month. That might be a duplex. I don't remember if it was or not. But yeah, I think the total rent on that would probably be about $1,500 to $1,600. So it's got a pretty good size there. But so that's the one I paid 35 for.
Were they servicing the loan themselves, or did they have a servicer?
They did not have a professionally licensed servicer like BIFI loans servicing. I know
you stated that.
I know you are shocked.
Because I'm like, okay, so no insurance, so they're probably like,
no insurance, a tenant, they rented it. There's a lot of red flags.
Who's paying
the cost of doing
Who's
business?
Paying taxes?
Who's paying the taxes?
They don't believe in paying taxes either.
Oh, I'm gonna move there then.
Taxes on this thing is pretty cheap. I want to say it's in Indiana we pay twice a year. We pay in May and we pay in November, and I think it was like $600 or $700 per 6 months to pay taxes. So like $1,200 for the year for taxes. So it's pretty affordable here in good old Indiana.
Shantae's car tax in Jersey.
I'm gonna say
Jersey's
Jersey. Oh yeah,
14,000
in Jersey.
I think my 2 cars, our excise tax is more than that. And it's not like I'm driving, and I'm not driving like $100,000 vehicles either.
And my camper was like $500 to renew the plates this year on it, and it's 2 years old. So yeah. So this one was pretty good. The other one, it's it's okay. It's probably atypical for. This is good old Indianapolis here. It's tough to tell from the pictures. It didn't look that bad to me. If you actually zoomed in, if it was better quality, you can see like there's some stuff out there. Like I guess the baby crib, the baby hangs out there with a little mobile, and there's a vacuum out there. So
I was gonna say usually paint the inside of the house the baby blue, not the outside. But when you have a boy, but hey, we'll give it to him.
I mean now it's a 4-bedroom with the outside bedroom there.
It's a working class neighborhood.
Yeah, you got it put in a closet somewhere. Put up some shelving and call that a closet. There we go.
It's neighborhood watch.
Yeah, so this is the one I paid 40 for. So I thought that this property was less value than the other one, land contract one, that I paid 35 for. So I was like, okay, somebody sold this for 85,000 and they put a $20,000 down payment. And if I have 40 into it, I mean, even if it really is worth 80 or 85, I'm at 50 cents on the dollar. So
you're good.
I don't have any issue at all right now, even if they're behind. So, but my goal was atypical of all these seller finance papers that I look at is I can get the borrower to start paying by just pushing a little bit with, attorney letterhead, just going through the process of just pushing them a little bit. And they typically end up paying. I'd probably say 7 to 8 times out of 10, I really get them to get caught up or have some sort of forbearance or maybe just a payment plan to get them caught up on a trial basis. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Does anybody have any questions or anything so far?
I would just state, all right, so the first one was truly an investor loan, okay? And the second one might have started out as an investor loan, but ended up being an owner occupant since he rehabbed it and is living in it. So a couple sets of rules differently there to follow.
Yeah. So go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say something about you mentioned with like demand letters and getting people to jump. So I did some case studies today on a webinar, and I was going back to the servicing notes, and Shantae right now is probably going to fall off her chair on this one because this story is hilarious or sad in the same way. So the bank that owned this was actually a bank loan that we bought, and the bank was using a servicer. who was using a third party to deliver the loss mitigation package. They would hand deliver it. Okay. But they also wouldn't tell the borrower, like, hey, you need to fill this out in 30 days. And they had an internal policy that if it takes longer than 90 days, they have to start the process over again. So this was literally Groundhog Day, where the servicer would say, oh, we hired the third party, they delivered it, the borrower received it. Then like they would get it like 6 weeks later, we received the package for, basically forwarded off to lender. And then basically it went through like lender red tape and so forth. So then it hit the 90 days. So the bank came back and said, oh, exceeded time limit, send a new package. And they kept doing this round and round for a year.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, so we bought the loan and the borrower actually offered to pay $3,000 down, and the payment was $1,000 a month. We'll pay an extra $1,000, so we'll give you $2,000 a month. So we buy the loan, we go through the servicing comments, and like, yeah, can you ask the borrower if they can give the $3,000 down and $2,000 a month? And then literally within 2 months, it took a little while, but boom, trial payment plan and got the payments on because they literally couldn't, between the lender. It really wasn't the servicer. It was the lender. Like they'd get the package and they'd have so much red tape that goes around and round that, yeah, it was hilarious. But my point was being, the point I was trying to make on that too is though, you need to take action. And if you have a borrower who's delinquent, send $100, $150, send a demand letter. That gets them to jump. It's probably, I'd say 9 out of 10, not 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
So this was interesting. I did make some mistakes on this one. We'll kind of get into that here. So the Land Contract 2 borrower, they were behind a couple of months. And my due diligence when I worked with this seller of these loans was like, okay, hey, can you prove the payments that they made? And they gave me, I think they were using, it wasn't Geek Pay, it was something like Geek Pay where it's just some sort of payment collector. And so they have a track record of the payment coming in. So I'm looking at the history of it and verifying, okay, yeah, you did receive those payments. Everything looks legit. And then so I put it in some sort of document that they have to sign and notarize to say, hey, is this true and accurate? And are you swearing in front of the Lord that this is accurate? But I didn't do an estoppel with the borrower, and I should have done that. And I'll explain why after a bit here.
By the way, can I just interrupt and say, people, listen to Justin, but watch Shantae's face right now. What happens when you do
I'm sweating and fighting the urge.
Her eyes are popping. And she's just like,
I can't
go. This is literally like taking your kid to walk by the cliffs or something, like taking your kid to the zoo and letting him stick his hand in the cage. I mean, this is kind of like, it's just like, face palm. So sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let people who are watching this on video, you can see why you want to use a servicer. We're probably going to get to.
Yes.
I have a quick question on this land contract, the second one.
Yeah.
The borrower's behind a few months. Were they consistently paying though? Like, was it like they were late a year ago and they just never caught up, or they weren't paying at all?
So they started off paying well, and towards the summer, it was June or July, they had missed a payment, and then they made the next payment. They didn't get caught up. They just made another payment.
Yeah.
And then they skipped another month, made another payment, and then they stayed regular on the month. So they had a history of showing that. I'll just go ahead and fast forward. So come to find out, after I board the loan, and I talked with the borrower, they were complaining and saying, no, we made those payments. And I said, I'll give you credit for them as long as you can prove them. I think it's only fair. I got this thing for a pretty good discount, so I wasn't worried about, losing out on a couple of payments. So they proved that they did make those payments, and they sent it to that, the payment. I won't even call them a servicer. I'll call them a payment collector. I won't give them the pleasure of calling them a servicer, right? The payment collector. Yeah, and they were just awful to deal with. I mean, the guy that I bought these loans from, and after they communicated with them that, hey, there's going to be a new servicing company servicing the loans, so stop collecting the payments on them, and this other company's going to start collecting on it. And so they pretty much just shut down his account and kept it like that. Both borrowers actually were still sending the next payment to that payment collection agency, and the payments just ended up in their ether, just ended up in there. They don't know where it's going to go. It's just in their bank account. And so it took a couple of months of poking and prodding and yelling, and finally we figured out that there's one person in there that works, and that person had COVID for like 2 weeks. And so that we didn't get any answers, but they found the money, and then they finally forwarded it on to the person I bought it from so that I can get the payments. But anyways, when you don't have a professionally licensed servicer, this is the kind of nightmare that can happen when things aren't done with regulatory and up to, the federal guidelines and stuff.
Well, it's like we've seen loans like that where it was self-service by, somebody who was tired landlord, sold it to the renter, seller financing. They pass away, hand it off to the kids, and then it's like, well, where's the pay history? And like, well, we don't even know what's owed, sometimes. Or, it's like, what, where to even start? Yeah, we want to sell you this note, but I'm like, how can you confirm what's owed? And they're like, we kind of can't, because, he basically kept everything, handwritten, not even on his spreadsheet. So, you see that stuff like that as well. And that's scary because, we're talking, some of these hundreds of thousands of dollars that people are just like, oh, let me write it down on this notepad and stuff it in a drawer where
general ledger.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, you need that third party, you need that servicer who
to prove it out,
but also keep it compliant, because if there is a dispute, you don't want to be, in a lawsuit or a foreclosure complaint, they contest it, they can make life, can make life very difficult for you.
Yeah, they can, which is why I brought up the estoppel earlier. I didn't get the estoppel on this one, and I should have, just to make things clear up front. And it's something that people really should do as investors when they invest in these seller finance paper, is have that conversation with the borrower, document it, just to verify the things about the note and verify where the pay history is at on it.
Can you explain what estoppel is? Because some people don't know what one is.
Estoppel is a fancy word for you're just getting the borrower to swear in that, yes, I agree that the note and mortgage that I signed are these terms and these facts. Today's payment is this. I still owe this much, and I have made 57 payments. You're basically just regurgitating what the seller and buyer are saying, that everyone's on the same page, and the borrower signing it, notarizing it, say, yes, this is true and accurate. So they can't, when they go through foreclosure, like Chris said, the judge says, okay, you signed this piece of paper that said you still owe $100,000. So why are you saying you only owe 20? So.
And if there's any issues, it happens up front before you invest any money in the discussion is between the seller and the borrower. You're not in the middle.
So I was dealing with a lot of pains on this one, which is why I got a good discount, but I did spend a lot of time dealing with this. The seller was very difficult to pull information from. I would give them a bullet listed email with the exact things that I needed to answer before we closed. And then they kept going off of the email chain and starting a different chain from something else. And sometimes it's a nightmare when you deal with people that are so scatterbrained and they aren't staying true to the communication line, so that everyone can track and see everything and revert back to, oh no, this is what I said. I said 20,500, 4 emails ago. And so that part of it was a challenge, which is why the estoppel probably slipped on my part. So the good news is it wasn't a big deal that I didn't get the estoppel. It's just something that I could have nipped in the bud pretty quickly about this borrower getting their 2 payments owed to them and credited them, because by all means, if they paid it, they deserve to have that off their unpaid balance. Sure. There was confusion with the owner occupancy, because again, the seller I was dealing with told me they all lived at the property, and that wasn't the case. So he wasn't obviously vested in knowing kind of what these borrowers are doing and what's the situation there at these properties, which is why they didn't have insurance on the properties either. So that's surprise. One of them missed out on taxes, paying for at least a year. And I think it was the borrower that paid on time.
Did they? Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is when he did them on seller financing, was there any type of, I guess my question is, when they get paid off, do you have to give them like a warranty deed with title insurance, or is it just a quick claim deed, or how's that work? Because I've seen different cases on contract for deeds where some people who kind of don't know what they're doing write it, A, they never pulled title. And then B,
exactly, that's more common.
Like put in the contract, we'll give you a warranty deed where like sometimes, especially if it's bought at like tax sale and stuff, you might not be able to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't buy any of these unless they had created these with the title insurance to begin with, just to protect myself. Smart. In the case of these 2 lien contracts, I don't know off the top of my head what's written in there, what I have to do when they pay them off. I believe any lender should just go ahead and get the new title insurance and give them a warranty deed. It doesn't cost that much money to go ahead and do it. So I think that's what I would do anyways. But yeah, I don't know what the land contract said. I don't remember. But yeah, you probably can get away with just doing a quick claim if you wanted to take shortcuts if it wasn't required in the document.
Yeah.
I know for our situation, when we do a seller finance and I just completed one that because we took the underlying subject to, so I'm doing a land contract, just to stay in the middle. The title company was able to get title insurance on that land contract, so that then when the land contract buyer actually fulfills the contract, all we do is update the title insurance, and they got the warranty deed, and you're clean. So it's already being pulled and clean from the very get-go.
Yeah, just an update report. And that's exactly why I don't buy them unless they have the title insurance on there. If they don't, I ask them to go ahead and just get title insurance right now and a lender's policy or whatever I can get at that time. So this loan took a while to get actually into the servicer. So it took like 3 months to get it transferred after I even made, the purchase on it, just because of the old payment collector wasn't doing their job and dealing with the seller of this. This wasn't their primary means of making money, because this was something that just got off their books. So it was a lot of pushing and pulling. So there was some mistakes made, but hey, to get a 30 to 33% yield on an asset, sometimes you have to go through the ring of fire to get that far. Land contract 2 borrow, like I said, they proved that they made the payment, so I gave them credit for it. They're only really like 30 to 45 days behind right now, which is good. So that kind of ended the case study. As of today, I just pushed those over to our fund, actually, because they were pretty good deals. And I do have a forced place policy on them, so we're covered there. All the taxes are paid and up to date. We're all good there. The borrowers are all communicating with the servicer, and I believe one of them is actually set up on ACH now.
Awesome.
The one that was land contract one that was paying. So that's $1,200 coming in on the first of the month, like clockwork. The other borrower is not sure if they're struggling, but they're still behind a month or so. But they have been communicating, which is, as long as they're communicating. I don't know, Shantae, if you agree with this or not. It seems like you can get pretty far with them as long as they're just communicating with you.
You can. I feel like it puts me in a weird spot because they're not my loans, the ones that I'm working on and things like that. I don't own them, but communication, when it comes back to lenders, 9 times out of 10, they're like, okay, especially if they're not super spotty payers all the time. I think there's a little bit of leniency from the lender standpoint at times, and it's just make sure that you could try to catch up on those payments. I only see it become a headache when lenders are being lenient over and over and over again. You can't you got to get on some sort of payment, schedule that actually works and you could afford and that's on time. Some borrowers just pay late and have no problem also paying a late fee and doubling up the next month. That's some borrowers, not all of them though. So they still need to kind of have a fire lit under them sometimes.
So I tell you, that brings up a good point. In this world, particularly in seller financing, from my viewpoint, as long as they get that payment in that 30-day window, they're on time. I don't care if they don't necessarily meet the 15 days that we get grace period. If it's after that, I still consider it on time. And quite honestly, I don't have too much issue if they're doing a rolling 30, but they're somewhere they got behind, but they're consistently paying on time now. I'm not gonna push on that at all.
Most lenders don't. I've had some lenders that have been so gracious, they go out of their way, like, hey, defer that payment so it doesn't keep showing up as late. They don't keep accruing a late fee every payment. So I'm like, okay, there's lenders that'll go out of the way and ask that. That's something I naturally ask them. It's kind of up to you guys if that's what you would like. But for the borrowers that fall behind every so often, it's not too hard they just sometimes need a reminder call. So.
Yeah. The one thing I would tell for anybody who owns loans, and when you're working with your servicer, on borrowers who are, trying to come up with something, if they're like 3-4 months behind, when the servicer is going to communicate with them, manage your servicer and set the expectations with the servicer and basically say, hey, let the borrower know we need to, come up with a game plan by X date, or we need to see a payment come in by Y date. If you just tell the servicer, hey, can you reach out and ask them when they can make a payment, then they're just going to basically, that's what they're going to do. And the borrower's just going to basically be like, oh, sure, today's March 13th, April 1st, I'll make one. Then April 1st comes around and it's like, now what do you want me to do? Well, I need 2 more weeks. If it's like, no, if we don't have it by April 1st, we'll start the demand letter then and let them know, and you got to sometimes be careful about mentioning that you're going to start legal, but you can phrase it in a way of, if it's not by that date, then,
the lender has the right.
Yes.
Doesn't mean they will, but the lender has the right to proceed with legal action if they find it if you don't make that payment. That's kind of what we just tell everybody. And then they're like, oh, we don't want that. And it usually works.
Don't threaten legal though. If you're a lender, don't do it.
Don't ever. Nope.
Okay, so that was the 2-land contract case study that I have, and the growing pains that went with it. And like I said, to get those monster returns, sometimes you have to spend a lot of time fixing this stuff. So it may have looked like a lot going on. It was the time, but it was in short bursts. So it's not like it consumed me for an entire day, an entire week. This was just, annoying things. I knew how to navigate this, and I have little, I don't know, we call them like bookmarks as I go along, going through the closing process and the post-closing process of where I'm at with things. So I can pick up where I left off pretty easily with stuff like this now, since I've done it so many times. But yeah, if you've not done a transaction like this before, and you're trying to buy a note from somebody that's never sold a note before or created a note very well, you definitely want to get somebody involved that's done this before to help you along. Even your servicer that you're going to put it with, they probably know a lot more about it than you do on how to get it to the finish line. So don't be afraid to ask them, because like Shantae has always been a wealth of knowledge to me whenever I've had sticky situations, and she's been able to get me in the right direction before I even buy the things as well. Just have a question. So, all right. If you guys have loans out there that you want to be sold, or if you find a loan that you want to broker or trade,
we all want to buy.
We all looking to buy. We all buy lanes. Okay, we buy the lanes.
I'll give you guys the top 2. You guys can pick the top 2 and the bottom one. So my hair used to be as long as Shantae's before I had, and then I started buying land contracts and CFDs. Now look what it looks like. So you guys can take those.
Now
we'll make those. Okay.
The nose and ear hair are that long now. We're getting older. We're putting like 80 years on our lives. Yeah. Note and mortgages, note deed of trust is obviously the way to go. I'll buy the other ones. Don't worry about Chris. I'll take care of them. I'll buy them. Okay. So I typically try to convert them before I buy them anyways.
Me too.
And that's usually
a
good way to solve the problem. But yeah, for the most part, it's, Chris is not buying too many onesie twosies. He's looking at bigger pools and stuff. So but you'll buy the onesie twosies.
I'll buy onesie twosies. One thing I'll mention, Justin, I mean, you've got, the nice background, the logo, the commercials in between and stuff, but you don't have the QR code with your logo in the middle. A little disappointed in that, because the QR code is actually only based on the corner. So you can get one that puts your logo in the middle, So
there you go.
Just, you got everything else, you're 99.9% there. I just
Almost perfect. Almost perfect.
No, you are perfect. I'm not saying you're not perfect. You definitely are perfect, but just
an enhancement is needed.
Well played, sir. Well played.
So.
All right. The next time we're all going to meet is Wednesday, April 10th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Shantae, I'm not sure if Jamie will be back on then, but you're more than welcome to join us again. We like having you on.
You will be here because I have birthday plans that day. So that's going to be Jamie that week, but I'll be back any other time. That's great.
All right. Good deal.
Great to
have
everyone
you. Will everyone have their taxes done by the next one?
What's
Mine's
that?
already done.
You pay taxes? Why would you do that? You pay property taxes and personal taxes? What's wrong with you?
Ooh.
All right. There is a Facebook group out there that has Be the Bank Real Estate Note Investing on it. There's a few members in there. It's generally where we stream this stuff as well, and people that have questions and stuff. If the 3 of you are not in that group, I'll invite you in that group. I think some of you are, maybe not all 3 of you. But yeah, when people have questions, it's just fun to answer them, and then we can obviously bring stuff up on our call as a case study or scenario, and just kind of walk through something that maybe is more fun to talk about in a group setting like that. So,
Cool.
We typically have a Q&A time at the end, but we don't really have that much time left. I actually have to hop off and go pick up my kid. They're being watched by somebody right now, and I want to make sure that they're still alive. So.
Well, that would be good.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I have to do the same.
Getting a little nervous here, starting to sweat. I need to get off the call here. So thanks everyone for joining the call today. We'll just do our outro and we'll bounce. So
all right,
see you guys.
good seeing
Thank you all.
everybody. All righty.